We all hear that word tariff quite a bit, right? Especially lately. It sounds, well, maybe a bit dry, official.
Yeah, it can seem that way.
But think about it like this. What if suddenly your favorite coffee from, say, Colombia just shot up in price? Or that phone you wanted from overseas, bam, way more expensive.
Exactly. That's often a tariff at work right there.
And the story behind them, why we have them, what they actually do to our wallets and the economy. Honestly, it's fascinating. Not boring at all. We've got some great material today, some deep research reports like Understanding Tariffs.
Absolutely. It seems like just an economic term, but tariffs have this incredibly long, dramatic history. Really surprising stuff in there.
And it touches your life constantly, what you pay for things, jobs, the whole economic picture.
Right. So our goal today, our mission, if you like, is to pull back the curtain.
Yeah, give you a really solid, easy to grasp understanding. We'll define them, explain how they work, take that wild ride through history seriously. Wait till you hear some of this.
We'll look at the arguments, the pros and cons. There are always two sides, often more.
And what's happening now? Those 2025 tariffs? Elon Musk's completely different idea and what it all means for you listening right now.
So let's just jump in. What exactly is a tariff?
Okay, simplest terms.
Simply put, it's a tax. A tax governments put on goods coming into their country from somewhere else. Imported goods.
Like a border toll for products?
That's a great way to think about it, yeah. A toll booth at the border. And the main point, the immediate effect, is it makes those imported things more expensive.
Okay, so walk me through that. Let's use that car example from the sources, the 25% tariff on Canadian cars under the 2025 rules. What happens step by step?
Okay, so a Canadian car maker wants to sell cars in the U.S. They ship them over.
Right.
When those cars hit the U.S. border, U.S. Customs and Border Protection, CBP, gets involved. They look at the car's value. Let's say it's $20,000.
Okay.
CBP applies that 25% tariff. That's an extra $5,000 tax right there. The importer, the company bringing the car in, has to pay that $5,000 to the government.
Just to get it across the border.
Exactly. Now, that importer isn't just going to absorb that cost, are they? No way. They build it into the price they charge the dealerships here.
Makes sense.
And then the dealership, to make a profit, has to pass at least some, probably most, of that extra cost onto the person buying the car.
You. So the price tag I see goes up.
Likely, yes. And that, in theory, makes cars made here in the U.S. look cheaper by comparison, which is often the goal, right? Protecting local car makers.
So CBP are kind of like the tariff police, making sure everyone pays up.
Uh-huh. Yeah, you can say that. They're the ones on the ground enforcing these trade rules.
Yeah.
And they use this incredibly detailed guide.
Oh, yeah, the harmonized tariff schedule.
That's the one. Imagine a massive phone book, but for literally everything you can import. Thousands and thousands of categories.
13,000, the outline said.
Something like that, yeah. It's huge. Everything from, I don't know, raw cotton to finished electronics gets a specific code, and each code has a tariff rate attached. It's super specific.
Wow. Okay, so it's not just one simple tax rate.
Not at all. And there are different ways that tax is calculated, too.
Right. The outline mentioned types like ad valorem.
Yeah, ad valorem is the most common. That's just Latin for according to value.
Yeah.
It's a percentage, like our 25% car example. A 10% ad valorem tariff on a $100 widget is $10.
Okay, straightforward.
Then you have specific tariffs. These aren't based on value, but on the quantity. Like, say, $1 per pair of imported shoes, or maybe 50 cents per pound of sugar.
Regardless of how much the shoes or sugar cost.
Exactly. So a $1 specific tariff hits a cheap $10 pair of shoes harder. That's a 10% hike that it hits a fancy $200 pair, where it's only a 0.5% increase. See the difference?
Yeah, definitely. And the last one, compound.
Compound tariffs are just a mix of both. You might pay, say, 5% ad valorem plus a specific $1 per unit. They use different types for different goods and reasons. It gets complicated fast.
No kidding. That clarifies how they work day to day. But this idea, taxing imports, it's not new, is it? The history sounds pretty wild.
Oh, it's incredibly old. Especially in the U.S. context, it's tied up with the very founding of the country. Here's the kicker.
Lay it on me.
Before the government started collecting income tax, tariffs were basically it. That was the main piggy banks.
You're kidding.
Nope. Our PBS source says as late as 1860, something like 90% of all the money the federal government had came from tariffs on imported goods.
90%.
Oh.
That's unbelievable. So it wasn't about protecting industries back then. It was just funding the government.
Pretty much, yeah. Paying the bills, funding the army, building stuff. Revenue was the name of the game. But then, as the 1800s went on, American factories started popping up.
Right, the Industrial Revolution.
Exactly. And suddenly, there was a new reason for tariffs. Protectionism, shielding these young American companies from, the big established European competitors.
So they started raising tariffs to make imports more expensive,
You got it. Higher and higher tariffs became the policy, trying to encourage people to buy American even back then.
which leads us into the 20th century and the infamous Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act of 1930. That name always sounds ominous.
It really should. Smoot-Hawley is like the cautionary tale of tariffs gone wrong. It was passed right at the start of the Great Depression.
Bad timing.
Terrible timing. The idea was to protect American jobs. Same logic. They jacked up tariffs on thousands of items, thinking it would force people to buy domestic products. But it spectacularly backfired. Other countries got mad. They retaliated. They slapped huge tariffs on American goods being sold overseas.
A trade war, basically.
A massive one. Global trade just collapsed. Exports plunged. Imports plunged. Economists still argue about exactly how much blame it deserves, but pretty much everyone agrees. Smoot-Hawley made the Great Depression much, much worse and longer. It choked off international commerce.
Wow. A painful lesson learned, hopefully.
You'd think so. It definitely showed how interconnected things were and how trying to wall yourself off could hurt you just as much, if not more.
So, is that why things shifted after World War II? Towards freer trade?
Exactly. The memory of Smoot-Hawley was still raw. The U.S. actually led the charge to create JT, the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade.
Which became the WTO, the World Trade Organization.
That's right. The whole idea was, let's negotiate, let's gradually lower tariffs and trade barriers together. More cooperation, less economic warfare. And for decades, that was generally the direction.
But the sources mention that's been changing recently, a swing back towards protectionism.
Yeah, definitely. In recent years, you've seen a lot more talk about tariffs, trade deficits, protecting domestic jobs. The pendulum seems to be swinging back, at least somewhat.
Which brings us right back to the present. Why are countries still using tariffs, given those historical disasters? What are the arguments for them today? Let's unpack the pro side.
Okay. Well, the big one, the classic one, is still protecting domestic industries and jobs.
Like the steel example in the Dr. Salomon research.
Exactly. The argument goes, if foreign steel is way cheaper, maybe because of lower wages or government help over there, American steel companies can't compete. So a tariff on imported steel helps level the playing field, keeps U.S. steel mills open, and saves those jobs.
Makes sense from that perspective. And they still bring in money for the government, right? Even if it's not 90% anymore.
Oh yeah, it's still a revenue source.
Oh.
That Tax Foundation analysis estimated the 2025 tariffs could bring in something like $3.8 trillion over 10 years. That's not small change.
Definitely not. What else?
Tariffs can be used as a political tool.
Yeah.
Leverage, lower your barriers to our products, or we'll keep this tariff on yours.
A bargaining chip.
Right. Or they could be used to fight back against what are seen as unfair practices by other countries. Things like dumping.
Dumping?
Yeah, where a foreign company sells goods here for less than it costs them to make, just to grab market share and maybe drive local competitors out of business. Tariffs can counteract that. Or counter illegal subsidies governments give their own industries.
Okay. And national security sometimes comes up too.
Yes, that's another justification you hear. For critical goods, maybe certain defense components or medical supplies. The argument is we need to be able to make them here, even if it costs more. So we're not reliant on foreign suppliers in a crisis. Tariffs can help ensure that domestic production capability exists.
Okay, so protecting jobs, raising revenue, political leverage, fighting unfairness, national security. Those are the main arguments for tariffs.
Broadly speaking, yes.
But then there's the other side of the coin, the downsides. What are the big arguments against tariffs, especially for regular folks? Let's get into the cons.
This is where it often hits home the hardest. The biggest, most immediate impact for most people is higher prices.
Right, the cost gets passed on.
Exactly. When imports get taxed, the cost usually finds its way to the checkout counter. Our sources mention things like imported cars, certain fruits and vegetables. Prices can definitely go up.
Nobody likes paying more for groceries or a new car.
Definitely not. And then there's the retaliation risk we talked about with Smoot-Hawley. It's still a huge concern.
If the U.S. puts tariffs on Chinese goods,
China puts tariffs on American soybeans or airplanes. It becomes tit for tat, a trade war. And that hurts American industries that rely on exporting their products. So you might save jobs in one sector, but lose them in another.
it's a ripple effect.
A big one. And beyond specific industries, many economists argue broad tariffs just hurt the overall economy. That Tax Foundation report, It also estimated these tariffs could shrink the U.S. economy, the GDP, by about 1.3% in the long run.
That's significant.
It is. Tariffs can also mess up supply chains. Think about a modern product like a smartphone.
Components from everywhere.
Right. Chips from one country, screens from another, assembly somewhere else. Tariffs on any piece of that chain increase costs, cause delays, create headaches for businesses.
And there was that Milton Friedman quote.
Ah, yes, the classic free market argument. Friedman basically said tariffs protect producers from competition, sure, but they do it by protecting consumers against low prices. It flips the perspective, doesn't it?
It really does. Highlights that tension between helping producers and helping consumers.
And one last point. Tariffs can sometimes prop up industries that aren't very efficient. If they're shielded from foreign competition, they might have less pressure to innovate or cut costs.
So a real mixed bag. Potential benefits for some, but serious potential costs for consumers and the broader economy.
That's a fundamental trade-off, yeah.
Okay, let's zoom in on the current situation. These Trump 2025 tariffs we keep mentioning, what exactly are they?
Right. As of April 2025, the main ones are a 25% tariff on basically all goods coming in from Canada and Mexico.
Wow, 25% on our neighbors.
Yeah, plus a 10% tariff on a wide range of goods from China. And there are others too, like a 20% tariff on certain things from the European Union. It's pretty broad.
Targeting major trading partners across the board, what's the official reasoning? The stated goals.
The administration says the goals are primarily boosting American manufacturing, bringing jobs back, reducing the trade deficit, that gap between imports and exports, and also national security, encouraging domestic production of key stuff.
The familiar arguments?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
The core idea is make imports more expensive, people and businesses will buy American instead, and that creates jobs here.
But what are we actually seeing? What are the potential impacts, good and bad?
Well, it's definitely being debated. Proponents point to potential job gains in some specific manufacturing areas. That's the hope.
But the downside?
The big concern, echoed by sources like CNBC, is consumers paying more. For
Yeah.
cars, electronics, clothes, even food. Basically, anything imported or made with imported components could get pricier.
So, inflation pressure.
Potentially, yes. Plus, worries about an economic slowdown if businesses face higher costs and uncertainty. And we saw some market jitters, right? Fox News mentioned the NASDAQ hitting bear market territory around when these came in, though markets react to tons of things, of course.
It's never just one factor, so it's definitely not a clear win economically speaking. How are other countries taking it? Are they just accepting these tariffs?
Oh, definitely not. There's been significant pushback. Our trading partners, especially Canada, Mexico, and the EU, see these as protectionist and potentially harmful. Reuters reported strong hints, even threats, of retaliatory tariffs.
So the trade war scenario is a real risk.
It's absolutely on the table. They might target specific American exports of agriculture, maybe manufactured goods to hit back.
Yeah.
Is that classic tit-for-tat escalation risk.
Which makes this other idea that's popped up even more interesting, Elon Musk suggesting a zero-tariff situation with Europe. That's the complete opposite direction.
Right. It's a stark contrast. Musk, coming from a world of complex global manufacturing with Tesla and SpaceX, basically proposed eliminating all tariffs between the U.S. and Europe. Just get rid of them entirely.
A completely free trade zone. What would be the upside of that?
Potentially huge upsides. Lower prices for consumers on European goods, think German cars, French wine, Italian fashion. Easier, cheaper supply chains for businesses operating across the Atlantic. More trade overall, which could boost economic growth on both sides.
That's pretty good.
And maybe even stronger political ties, closer alliances, built on that economic integration.
Okay, but what are the catches? There have to be downsides.
Oh, for sure. The biggest worry would be job losses here in the U.S. industries that currently benefit from tariff protection against European competitors might struggle. Think about certain manufacturing sectors.
They'd face intense competition.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the government would lose all that tariff revenue it currently collects on European imports. They'd have to make that up somewhere else, maybe higher taxes elsewhere. Plus, as NBC News pointed out, this is more of a concept, an idea Musk floated, not actual policy being proposed right now. It's a long-term vision.
Still, it's fascinating coming from him, given some other contexts.
It really is. It shows how complex these trade debates are, not always following neat ideological lines. Interestingly, Business Insider reported that Germany's economy minister was kind of skeptical, maybe seeing it as a bit naive, or even a sign of weakness. So not everyone immediately jumps on board even with that idea.
Different perspectives everywhere. So we have the current broad tariffs and this radical zero tariff idea. What does the Dr. Salmon research suggest might be a smarter middle ground, maybe?
That research points towards a more surgical approach. Instead of these big, broad tariffs hitting everything, maybe focus tariffs very specifically. Target clear cases of unfair trade, like proven dumping or subsidies. Or perhaps strategically protect a few absolutely critical sectors for national security.
Use a scalpel, not a sledgehammer.
That's a good analogy, yeah. Address the specific problems without causing massive price hikes for everyone or starting global trade fights.
And the Atlantic Council piece had a similar idea, using tariffs as tools.
Right. They recommended thinking of tariffs more like a temporary tool in the toolbox, mainly for negotiation. You use the threat, or maybe the short-term imposition, of a targeted tariff to get another country to change a specific practice, then you remove it once you achieve your goal, not as a permanent policy fixture.
So, aiming for balance, avoiding the extremes.
Exactly. Balancing growth, consumer prices, fair trade, and protecting truly vital industries. Yeah. It's a tough balance to strike.
Okay, this has been incredibly informative about the big picture, but let's really bring it home. Why should I, the listener, care about all this tariff stuff in my daily life? Connect the dots for me.
Absolutely the key question. Because these policies, even though they sound high level, directly hit your wallet and your choices.
How so?
Thinking of buying a car soon, new or used. Tariffs, especially on imports or parts, can push that price up significantly.
Okay, that's concrete.
Do you buy, well, anything imported?
Hmm.
Coffee, clothes, electronics, furniture, certain foods. Tariffs can raise the price you pay for all of those. You might already be paying more without realizing exactly why.
I probably am.
And it's not just the price tags. The overall health of the economy affects everyone, right? Job availability, wage growth, investment. Tariffs play a role in that bigger picture too.
So understanding them makes me a smarter shopper and maybe a more informed citizen.
Exactly. When you hear news about trade deals or new tariffs, you'll have a better sense of what it might mean for you, for your community, for the country. You can analyze the claims politicians make, understand the potential trade-offs.
So maybe pay a bit more attention when the price of my favorite imported cheese goes up or when there's news about trade talks.
Precisely. See if you can connect those dots. It's about understanding the economic forces shaping your world. That knowledge is power, really.
Okay, wow. We've covered a ton of ground. From the definition to this crazy history, the pros and cons, what's happening now, let's try to boil down the main takeaways.
I think the big things are tariffs are complex. They're not simple. They have this long, really interesting history.
Not just dry economics.
Right. They're used for lots of reasons, raising money, protecting jobs, political games. But they come with real risks. Higher prices for us, the consumers, is a big one. And the danger of trade wars is always there.
And the current U.S. approach is just one way of doing things with its own potential consequences. And there are other ideas out there, like that zero tariff concept.
Exactly. It's an ongoing debate with huge stakes.
So after all that, here's something to chew on for everyone listening. Given everything we've talked about, the history, the economics, the current debates, what do you think? What's the best way for a country like the U.S. to handle trade? How do you balance protecting jobs at home with keeping prices low and getting along with other countries?
And maybe think about how the choices being made right now, today, could affect the economy you live and work in tomorrow, next year down the road.
Heavy thoughts, but important ones.
Definitely. And if you want to dig even deeper, check out some of those sources we mentioned, like the Tax Foundation analysis or the PBS history piece. Lots more detail there.
Well, thank you for taking this deep dive with us today into the world of tariffs. It might seem complicated, but as we've seen, it's incredibly relevant.
Hopefully, this sheds some light on how it all works and why it matters to every single one of us.
Thanks for listening.